to The Explainer. Today we're exploring what happened after the Great Flood, a story from Genesis about humanity's second chance. And let me tell you, it's this fascinating cycle of divine promises met with some very human failures.
And really, that's the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? We're about to see this dramatic cycle that kicks off with incredible grace and, spoiler alert, ends in a pretty spectacular act of rebellion. So, let's dive right in.
Okay, so the story begins with pure hope. The text says God remembered Noah. Now, in Hebrew, that word is zakar, and it means so much more than just a passing thought. It's this deep, constant awareness, an active kind of remembering that actually sets salvation in motion. It's powerful stuff.
377 days. Can you even wrap your head around that? That's how long Noah, his family, and all those animals were cooped up inside the ark. We're talking a full year and 10 days, plus the 7 days they waited before the flood even started. What an absolutely incredible test of faith.
So, to see if it was safe, Noah acted like a cautious captain. As you can see on this timeline, this whole thing was a long, slow process. He sent out a raven, then a dove. It wasn't until almost a full year had passed that the dove finally came back with a fresh olive branch. And that was the sign they'd been waiting for. Judgment was over, and a new era could finally begin.
So the very first thing Noah does when he steps onto dry land, he builds an altar and gives thanks. And God's response, which you see right here, is this profound promise. This signals a huge shift, you know? From now on, human failure is going to be met with grace, not another world-ending flood.
And this promise, well, it wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was formalized into something much more powerful and permanent: the Rainbow Covenant.
God establishes what's called a covenant. And as you can see, this isn't just a simple deal or a contract. No, it's a sacred, unbreakable promise. And get this, it's made not just to Noah's family, but to all their descendants and every living creature for all time.
And here's the symbol, the rainbow, created by light and water, the very elements of the flood, is completely repurposed. It becomes this beautiful, visible sign of God's promise to never, ever again destroy the world with a flood.
But you know, there's some important fine print here. The promise was specific: no more floods. This didn't mean an end to judgment altogether. In fact, later biblical writers like the Apostle Peter pointed to a future judgment of a totally different kind, one by fire. But despite this incredible new beginning, this fresh start for all humanity, the story pivots hard. It shows us the human nature wasn't magically fixed by the flood. The old flaws reappear pretty quickly, and they start right inside Noah's own family.
It's a really strange and troubling episode. Noah, the hero of the flood, plants a vineyard and gets drunk. His son Ham finds him in this vulnerable state, and instead of showing respect, he basically goes and mocks him to his brothers. Shem and Japheth, as you see here, do the honorable thing, but the damage is done. When Noah wakes up, he places a curse not on Ham directly, but on his son Canaan, and this curse will have consequences that echo through the history of nations for the rest of the Bible.
As humanity starts to multiply again, from Noah's 3 sons, the stage is set for the next great rebellion. And the family lines that are established right here, they lead directly to it.
Okay, this slide does a brilliant job illustrating how the Bible traces the world's nations back to these 3 sons. But I want you to look closely at 2 names highlighted here. From Ham's line, you get Nimrod, a key figure of rebellion. And from Shem's line, you get Eber, who is the ancestor of the Hebrew people. This distinction is going to be really important.
So Nimrod is called a mighty hunter, but that's about more than just being good with a bow and arrow. He represents raw power and defiance. He founds Babylon and Nineveh, cities that become these symbols of opposition to God. He's the leader who unites humanity, not in worship, but in a project of pure self-glorification. This spirit of rebellion, led by figures like Nimrod, it all comes to a head on the plain of Shinar. This is where a united humanity, all speaking one single language, decides to build the ultimate monument to their own greatness, the Tower of Babel.
I mean, look at this. Their motivation was crystal clear, and it was entirely self-serving. They wanted to make a name for themselves. This wasn't just about building a tall tower. It was a direct rejection of God's command to be fruitful and fill the earth. They wanted to cluster together and build their own kingdom on their own terms.
God sees this collective pride as a dangerous path and decides to intervene. Not with a flood this time, but with something else entirely. He confuses their language. The very thing that united them now divides them.
As you can see, their goal of unity just becomes chaos. Their project grinds to a halt, and in a great irony, they are forced to scatter across the earth, fulfilling the very command they were trying to resist.
So, the legacy of Babel is a fractured, confused world. But this divine reset also marks a major turning point in the whole story. With humanity scattered, God's strategy for interacting with them is about to change dramatically.
One of the most fascinating details in this part of the Bible is something you can see so clearly on this chart: the drastic drop in human lifespan. I mean, we go from Noah living 950 years to his son Shem living 600, all the way down to Abram at 175. Something fundamentally changed in the world after these events.
And this right here is the single biggest shift in the entire narrative so far. With humanity scattered, the story's camera lens basically zooms way in. It pivots from dealing with all of humanity at once to focusing on one man and one family as the new vehicle for God's plan.
And that leaves us with this powerful question. After a global flood and a global rebellion, the divine strategy changes. The hope for a scattered, prideful world now rests on a promise made to one man, Abram. And how that promise unfolds? Well, that's where the story goes next.